welcome everybody to another edition of Community Connections. We're joined today by two members that are representing the Solar Array Project. First to my left, Grace Garvey, who is the chair of the Plymouth Energy Commission. And to her left, Ted Van Sant, who is here with Barrington Power. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks.
So first, Grace, talk about the Plymouth Energy Commission. How did it come about? What's its goal going forward?
Sure. So actually the commission was formed, I think it was back in 2010, and its specific goal is to research ways to save town money, but also ways to save money that are in keeping with lowering impact environmentally and also reducing carbon emissions. And we have a set of bylaws, we report to the select board, and we make recommendations.
And you guys have your own meetings as well that people can be a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So we meet the second Thursday of every month,
Awesome.
6 p.m.
So why solar at this point in time? I know you talked about a little bit more clean energy, but why is solar important for Plymouth?
Well, I don't know if specifically for Plymouth. I think the Plymouth Energy Commission, all the members share my thoughts that it's important internationally, worldwide. It produces a clean, zero emissions electricity. It's really a lot easier to find sites for the zero emissions electricity as opposed to like wind or hydro. So you can really reduce your footprint if your goal is to produce zero emissions electricity. And right now it costs a lot less than other sources of zero emission energy. So that's why we think solar here in Plymouth is a great idea. Plus we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's going to generate revenue for the town.
Well, that's what everyone really cares about in this day and age. Ted, what is being proposed and where is it being proposed? I know there's been a lot of talk of different locations over the last few months.
Yeah, we have looked at a lot of locations, but the system will be built in a field across from the airport and right next to the road. It's going to be ground-mounted solar panels. They're mounted to steel frames in rows and tilted to the south. And in that location, the system would be interconnected with the airport's electrical service. And so the airport doesn't use a lot of electricity, and this system's going to be rather large and can produce way more electricity than the airport uses. So all that exported electricity will be converted to dollars and will be paid to the town annually. So that's how the system generates revenue.
And Grace, why this type of system and why was the airport and that road kind of chosen?
Okay, great question. So as Ted alluded to, we had done a pretty thorough search in the town of Plymouth of different places where we might put a solar array. We looked at some town buildings, and then we looked at 5 ground mounts. This site was chosen because it has a really good southern exposure. There's already a cleared space for the array, and again, this is just a proposed site at this point. So there's already a cleared site. It's currently a field, so we don't have to do we don't have to spend a lot of money to prep the site. And because a lot of the other ground locations would have been more costly to actually prep. The roof mounts we looked at they just didn't pan out, so to speak. Like we looked at the police department quite a bit, and there's a big hill to the west, so it really shaded the array to the point where it might not be economical. Mm-hmm. And we've looked at the transfer station, and the roof there just didn't make sense. So again, the ground mount for us, for the PEC, made sense. We also looked at the highway department site behind Hitchner, but we didn't want to really conflict with the things that were already going on that lot. The highway department was using that mm-hmm. site for, unless we could figure out a way to coexist. Mm-hmm. We haven't completely let go of that site as an option, but right now we think that the one across from the airport, which is town-owned land, is the most optimum.
Ted, I'll throw one for a loop right now as well. What is the difference in space that's being proposed at the next to the airport versus, say, the police station? Is it just the square footage of the solar arrays that's the beneficial here?
Yeah, so if we were to put a solar array on any one of the buildings, it would be much smaller than the town's overall use. So we did try to put it on some of the buildings, but each one of the buildings either the roof age was the wrong age, it didn't need to be replaced at that time, or there was shade on the roof, or for whatever reason, all the roofs that we looked at just didn't work. And so this ground array allows us to do one large array that produces a high percentage of the electricity used by the town.
That's fantastic. And for you as well, Ted, from Barrington Power, who would own the solar arrays and the site property? Is it going to be Barrington Power? Is it going to be the town of Plymouth? And what does that do financially?
That's a great question. So Barrington Power does own solar arrays for certain municipalities and entities, but in this case, it made more sense for the town to own it and to borrow money. So the idea would be the town will own the system and maintain the system. They'll borrow money from a bank. Total project cost is $686,000, but the town will reduce that by a 40% direct pay, which is a new part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay.
So the town will get a direct payment from the federal government for 40% of the system cost. Another item that reduces the cost is a $10,000 rebate from the New Hampshire Energy Department. And then once these cost reductions are taken into account, along with other credits and costs, including maintenance and insurance, all those are factored in, the town's going to receive income from the sale of the energy, but the income from the sale of the energy is greater than the overall cost, mainly the cost of the loan payment. So at the end of the year, the town will have net positive cash from this project, and the town can use that money to A, pay down the loan, and B, pay their electric bills.
And looking at that a little bit more, is that just a one lump sum from the power company at the end of the year, or is it throughout the year?
Yeah, the way it's a great question. The way the New Hampshire Electric Co-op does it is if you want to get them to pay back in the most simplest fashion, it's just one lump sum at the end of the year, and it reduces paperwork for them and it reduces paperwork for the town.
So we'll see how it all benefits, hopefully going forward. Grace,
Right.
for you, here in this town, everyone, including myself, is always worried about taxes with all the nonprofits in the area, the university. What's the potential tax impact in this year, the next coming years with this project?
Great, I appreciate the question. So let me just back up a little bit. So in January, I think it was January 23rd, there was a bond hearing on this project. The project estimated cost is $686,000. During that bond hearing, there was conversation about it potentially increasing the tax rate 20 cents per thousand. So if your home is worth $300,000, it would cost you $60 for the first year.
Okay.
And I say that very, very carefully for the first year, because what is happening, or what will happen if this all goes forward, is that there's a lag time. So we go to warrant March 15th. If it's approved by the voters, we take it to all the permitting and then the construction time. Our suggestion to the select board right now is to acquire a loan through the Community Development Finance Authority, the CDFA. We've been quoted a loan rate of 3% from them.
Which nowadays is
Oh,
fantastic.
it's ridiculously good. And it's 3% because the town of Plymouth fits certain categories to lower it from what was estimated by the financial director at the town of Plymouth as 7%. So when, during the bond hearing, when they were talking about 20 cents per thousand increase, first of all, there would only be an increase, or there would only appear to be an increase for the first year, because the budget year is 23-24, right? We won't be constructing and generating power probably until the fall of 23.
Okay.
So there's a lag time there. We would have to take the loan out ahead of time, and there might be a loan payment or two, although we're talking with the CDFA about deferring maybe a first payment to make it more economically attractive to the town. And then the check, as Ted was alluding to from the power company, which would be the co-op, would come, as you mentioned, once a year, but it wouldn't come until March of '24.
Okay.
So there is an anticipated, it appears that there's an initial increase. We're proposing, the Plymouth Energy Commission's proposing that it's not actually 20 per thousand because of the rate that has been quoted to us through the CDFA. But anyway, that would just be for the first year. After that, it's revenue to the town. So if you use that same model of saying that the tax rate is going to be increased for that first period where there's a lag time,
Yep.
then we would propose that there will actually be a decrease in the property tax. I
Going
hope that
forward
makes
after
sense.
that, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
it's the building of everything and getting the supplies and construction on board.
Exactly.
That needs to be raised first, part of that 40%, if I'm not mistaken, and then people will see
Exactly.
the benefits of it.
Sorry, I didn't
and it's
mention
a
that.
35-year project, so ideally it'll last for 35 years, so those tax savings will happen over 35 years.
That's fantastic. And Ted, for you, talk more about the monetary values and the environmental benefits kind of overall as a big picture for everybody.
Yeah, so really as a summary, the monetary benefits are the town generates revenue from this project, which the town can use to pay, which the town will use to pay off the loan, but there'll be extra money to then pay some of the electric bills. So that's the monetary benefit. The environmental benefit is that it's zero emissions electricity. There's no emissions at all, and so that's the bottom line. Is it reduces the carbon footprint of the town. It's environmentally safe. There's no emissions, and it's a good win-win for the town.
And talk a little bit more about the maintenance. People always want to know what costs are going to be hidden, in that year 35 to go. A lot of things might be breaking down. What are the confidence you can give people that it's going to be cheaper?
Well, we've included in the budget in these calculations of having net revenue for the town that there's a cost to the town to hire a company to come and do maintenance on the system every year. So they'll come and look at all the different parts to make sure that they're working properly and there's no mice nests or things that happen. In every electrical box, you open it up and there's mouse nests in there. So they open it up, they clean things out, they keep it clean. There's mowing that needs to be done, and that will either be done by another company that the town could hire, or the town could use their own crew and save money there. And then typically in year 15, the inverters will need to be replaced. So that's also included. So you put a little bit of money away every year, and then at that year 15, you can replace the inverters. But other than that, the steel and the panels are warranted for 25 years, and realistically are going to go for 35 to 40 years.
That's
So there's
awesome.
very little maintenance to do. It's just you hire professionals annually, and you mow the field.
Yeah, just that general upkeep that everyone knows with owning a home as
That's
well.
right. Yeah.
Grace-
Go
yeah, go ahead.
Let me
Go
just jump
ahead.
in real quickly because so we forwarded Dan the spreadsheet, and if you want to show it now, we can sort of show the accumulation of the income that would come from generating the electricity year to year, and the estimate. And this is a model. You plug a bunch of Barrington Power plugged in a bunch of calculations into this established model for this sort of a system, and over 35 years. There's going to be like $1 million of revenue coming into the town, which is huge. Like there's nothing on the warrant articles right now for town meeting that's going to generate revenue, and $1 million over 35 years is great.
Yes, anything to help kind of bring down that tax rate. I know everyone's so worried about it because it is one of the highest, but
Right. Two other things I wanted to speak to too about what Ted was talking about. The maintenance, as I'm being told by the town manager, is that the the airport manager, Colin MacGyver, he's actually jumped in and said that he could mow it because they have to mow the fields across the street anyway. And then there was another piece. Ted talked about zero emissions from the electricity being generated. We don't want to deny that there's some impact by creation of the solar panels or the metals that come with construction of these kind of systems. We just think this is much less impacting to the environment and really good for a low carbon footprint But there's no really free ride, right? We
Yeah.
just think this is a better way to address a lot of issues, bringing money into the town and reducing our footprint are two of the big ones for the Plymouth Energy Commission, the way we see it. So I just wanted to throw that in.
And you guys have been partnered on this for a while, Barrington Power and the Plymouth Energy Commission. Grace, how did you present Barrington Power to the select board and why you guys wanted to go with them?
Sure. So at town meeting, the voters said yay on basically putting out our request for proposals to different solar contractors. We got 3 responses. We interviewed 2. One didn't really meet some of the criteria, one contractor. And from that, we suggested to the select board that they choose Barrington Power. Barrington Power has a lot of experience with municipal projects such as this, like tons of experience. And also Ted's local, so he being the representative of Barrington Power can come this morning, right? He's not that far away. So we thought that was kind of a win-win in terms of the folks that we interviewed. So we recommended to the select board that they engage in a memorandum of understanding with Barrington Power because it was after town meeting, a little bit after town meeting and the interviews. And part of that memorandum was to develop the best proposals, which we talked about, looking at all those sites, and then narrowing them down, representing them all along the way to the select board. We've had public hearings, we've reported out to the select board, ad nauseum. They're probably sick of hearing from us. And then coming up with this proposal. So that's why we chose Barrington Power and how we did it. That memorandum of understanding also goes on to say that if we find a project that seems to suit the community, that they would be the folks to build it because they've been on the front lines developing the proposal.
Ted, any final thoughts before we wrap up here? What else should people know heading into town voting?
Well, I think the one thing that strikes me is that the Plymouth Energy Commission has been looking at solar several different rounds. I think this is the 3rd round, and they've been looking at it for years. And first of all, I think that Grace and the rest of the folks have done a great job of really thoroughly looking at this. Not only just all the different potential sites, but all the different potential ways of financing it. And so this is, as Grace said, we've discussed this back and forth with the select board several times. We've gone through the financials, and so it's a really well thought out, thorough process. And so that's what's striking to me about it.
And Grace, following up on Ted's point there, if people want more information or if they want to get involved with the Energy Commission, how do they do that?
So Dan's going to broadcast a brochure here, and at the bottom is our email address. We are handing these handouts out. There's a table at the town hall. We'll also be at the transfer station handing out, answering questions. We talked today to Bobby, who's running the Cafe Monte Alto down on Main Street. We're hoping to do a session there to talk, just like a roundtable coffee conversation about the solar project to answer questions. We'll be out and about quite a bit in the next 3-4 weeks, however many weeks there are before.
It's coming
town
quick.
meeting. And one of the big points I want to make is that you have to show up at town meeting on the 15th in order to vote, hopefully, your support for this project. So it's not going to be on the ballot on the 14th, but we will be there on the 14th also answering questions as people come to vote on the ballot, handing out flyers, handing out the Excel spreadsheet. But again, if you want to shoot a question, go ahead and send it to that email address.
That's fantastic. Grace, Ted, I want to thank you both for being here on Community Connections. It's a great project, and hopefully it goes forward. I wish you all the best of luck, and we'll see what happens on March 15th.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan.